Hey everyone, Miss Faiai here to read Act 5 of Romeo and Juliet. This is the last act of Romeo and Juliet, the play by William Shakespeare. Before we go into Act 5, let's do a quick review of Acts 3 and 4. Okay, so Act 3 starts back up on page 7. So I'm going to scroll back up there really quickly. And at the top of page 7, we find that Mercutio and Tybalt actually are going to get into a fight. And it's when Romeo shows up that Mercutio kind of calls Tybalt out. Well, they've been calling each other out, and then they end up participating in a duel. And unfortunately, Mercutio ends up being killed by Tybalt, who is able to stab him under Romeo's arm because Romeo goes in to break it up. So Mercutio is in the process of dying, and he ends up telling both of them a plague on both your houses. Okay, so that he curses both of the families, and then he dies. And then Romeo is just upset. He is super upset, and so he calls out Tybalt, and he basically tells him, like, let's fight. Like, one of us is going to die tonight. One of us is going to join Mercutio. One of us or both of us. And so then Romeo ends up killing Tybalt in a fit of rage and revenge. And then after this, in Act 3, Scene 5, it jumps into Romeo being with Juliet at her house. So after he kills Tybalt, remember, Tybalt is a Capulet. He kills Juliet's cousin, and he ends up going to spend the night with his wife. And in the morning when he's trying to leave, Juliet is kind of playing around with him, like, no, it's still nighttime. And then she realizes, oh my gosh, no, it's daytime, you have to go. So Romeo takes off, and when he takes off, Juliet's parents come in, or her mom comes in first, and basically tells her, like, we want you to marry this guy Paris that we've been planning for you to marry. And Juliet tells her, no, I'd rather marry my enemy, my sworn enemy, Romeo. Hint, hint to the parents. They don't get it. So then her dad comes in, and he basically tells her, either you're going to marry my friend, or you're going to die in the streets, and I don't really care about you. So make sure you marry my friend. And when she turns to the nurse and asks the nurse, like, what do you think? The nurse ends up agreeing with the parents and is like, well, Romeo's banished for killing your cousin. So you might as well just marry Paris because it's the safest thing for you to do. So the person she trusts more than anything in the world, the nurse she feels turns on her. So she's like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see the friar. And that's when we end up in Act 4. And so Juliet goes to the friar, and she tells Friar Lawrence, who is also friends with Romeo, either you give me a solution to my current dilemma, my problem with having to marry Paris, or I'm going to kill myself. And so the friar ends up preparing a plan for her. And he's a potion kind of master. He works with plants all the time, and so he gives her this potion, and he tells her to drink it, and it's going to make her appear dead. And then when her parents go to bury her in the family tomb, he will already have sent a message out to Romeo telling Romeo of their plan for Juliet to pretend she's dead, so that the two of them can run off when Romeo comes in and will save her from the family tomb. Okay, so that's the plan. Juliet's okay with it. And then she ends up going home, and she takes the potion, and she kind of foreshadows. She says, oh, look, methinks I see my cousin's ghost seeking out Romeo. Stay, Tybalt, stay. That's her dead cousin, Tybalt. And then in the morning, she's found by the nurse. And so now here we are in Act 5, Scenes 1 and 2. And remember, guys, right at the very top, you have your characters. So in Act 5, Scenes 1 and 2, at the bottom of page 11, the characters that we have are Romeo, Balthazar. Remember, Balthazar is his servant, his right-hand man. You have the apothecary. We're going to introduce him in just a moment. And then John, which is another friar who is going to be the messenger. And then Friar, who we know is Friar Lawrence, the friend of Romeo and the one who's married them. I remember these scenes right here. These notes just tell us what scenes we are, the stage direction, where the scene is taking place, the stage direction, so on and so forth. So we're in Mantua. This is a different part of the area we're not in Verona anymore. We're in Mantua with Romeo. That's where he's been banished to. It's in the afternoon, and Romeo is alone. And then his servant Balthazar has entered. And so we cut off Balthazar went to the city. We cut this part out, but it's good to know. Balthazar went to the city to kind of get things that him and Romeo would need, and to kind of see what's going on with his parents and let everyone know he's okay. And Balthazar actually witnesses Juliet's funeral. Okay, so Balthazar comes back to Mantua, and Romeo says, "News from Verona? How now, Balthazar? Dost thou not bring me letters from the friar? How dost my lady? Is my father well? How fares my Juliet? That I ask again, for nothing can be ill if she be well." So remember, these underlined words can also be translated into modern English. So how now would be hello. How fares or how is. Okay, so basically he's so excited. He's asking Balthazar all these questions like, how's the friar? How's my family? How's my wife? Like, if she's good, everything is good. Okay, and Balthazar replies, then she is well and nothing can be ill because her body sleeps in Capulet's monument. Okay, so that's Capulet's tomb, and her immortal part with angels lives. So she's dead. And Romeo, that's how Romeo finds out, and Romeo replies, "Is it even so? Then I defy you, stars." And then aside, remember, aside means to himself, like the audience, we can hear it, but he's talking to himself. And he says, "Well, Juliet, I will lie with thee tonight." So what is his plan? He plans to join her and obviously kill himself, right? So then it kind of goes into the next scene of Act 5. It says, we're outside the apothecary shop in Verona, and it's that same night, and Romeo is there, okay? And an apothecary is basically like a potion person, similar to the friar, except he sells poisons, okay? Because back then they didn't really have access to doctors and medication, so you would go to the apothecary for like relief if you were having a tummy ache, or relief if someone was dying, to give them kind of this potion or poison to kind of relieve the pain of dying painfully, I guess. It would help people like kind of die peacefully without pain. That would be the idea. So Romeo's outside this apothecary shop, and he's going to meet the apothecary, and Romeo says, "What, hey, apothecary?" So he's calling him, and the apothecary enters. He enters the scene, and he says, "Hell, who calls so loud?" And Romeo tells him, "Let me have a dram of poison, such soon speeding gear as will disperse itself through all the veins that the life-weary taker may fall dead." So basically, give me some fast-acting potion so that I can take my life. And the apothecary replies to him, and he says, "Such mortal drugs I have, but Verona's law is death to any he that utters them." So he basically tells him, I have these deadly drugs, but if I sell them to you, I can be sentenced to death. And Romeo tells him, "Then be not poor, but break it and take this." And he offers him all this money. And the apothecary says, "My poverty, but not my will, consents." So basically, I'm so poor, I don't want to do it, but because I'm so poor, I have to consent. I have to agree to give this to you. And so Romeo tells him, basically to make him feel better, he says, "I pay thy poverty and not thy will." Like, I'm giving you this money because you're poor. I'm not giving it to you because you want it. And the apothecary offers him the poison. So this is when he hands him the poison, and he tells him, "Drink it off. And if you had the strength of 20 men, it would dispatch you strength." So it's that strong that if 20 men took this, they would die right away. So as one person takes it, you're guaranteed to die, okay? And Romeo hands him the money, and then he says, "There is thy gold," and aside to the bottle of poison. So now he's actually talking to the bottle of poison, and he tells the bottle, "Come, go with me to Juliet's grave, for there must I use thee." So I plan on going to the grave to see my wife, and I'm going to drink the poison there. Right? So then now we're in the church, and the Friar Lawrence, the one who married them, who's Romeo's friend, he's there. And Friar John enters. This is the one who was carrying the message of the plan that him and Juliet came up with for Juliet to pretend to kill herself, okay? So let's see what happens with that message. So John enters, and he says, "Holy Friar," and Friar tells him, "Welcome from Mantua. What says Romeo?" And John tells him, "I could not send your letter, nor get a messenger to bring it." And he hands him the letter. So basically, the letter never went to Romeo. What Friar gave it to John. John was supposed to give it to a messenger to deliver it or find a way to deliver it. It never went there. It came right back to the friar. So here's the friar's response. "Unhappy fortune, Romeo hath had no notice of these accidents. The letter was of dear import, and the neglecting it may do much danger. Within 3 hours will fair Juliet wake. Fear comes upon me. Oh, much I fear some ill unthrifty thing, poor living corse closed in a dead man's tomb." So basically he's saying within 3 hours she's going to wake up, and I'm scared that she's going to wake up in this tomb by herself. Like she's going to be locked in this tomb with dead bodies. And they exit, and that's the last that we hear from them. So now let's move on to Act 5, Scene 3, and let's see what happens. So in this scene, we have the characters are Romeo, Juliet, the prince, and others who have no speaking parts. And we're already in the Capulet tomb. Remember, these are our stage directions and our scene. We're in the Capulet's tomb, and Juliet is in the tomb. But there's something we left out in this abridged version. When Romeo arrived at the tomb, Paris was there. And he ends up killing Paris. Remember, Paris was the one that was supposed to marry Juliet. So Paris ends up being another person that dies. So that, just wanted to put that out there before we get into this next scene where now we're actually in the tomb. And so Romeo, he enters and he goes over to Juliet in this tomb and he tells her, "My love, my wife, why art thou yet so fair," like beautiful? "I will stay with thee, and never from this place, palace of dim night, depart again. Here will I set up my everlasting rest. Eyes, look your last. Arms, take your last embrace. And lips, oh, you the doors of breath, seal with a righteous kiss. A dateless bargain to engrossing death." And he kisses her. "Come, bitter conduct, here's to my love." And he drinks the poison and he kisses her again. And then right when he does that, Juliet wakes up and she says, "Romeo?" And then Romeo's response is, "Thus with a kiss I die." And he dies. And now Juliet's wide awake in this tomb and her dead husband's there and he just drank this poison. And her response is, "Romeo, what's here? Poison? Drunk all and left no friendly drop to help me after? I will kiss thy lips. Haply some poison yet doth hang on them to make me die." And she kisses them, hoping that there's poison left on his lips. But there's nothing. So she grabs Romeo's dagger and she says, "Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath." So this is what you can basically use to put yourself in. And she kills herself. She stabs herself. And that's how they die. So now the final scene of the play. It's dawn the next day. These are the people in the scene. It's the prince, Lord and Lady Montague, Lord and Lady Capulet, the friar, the nurse, Benvolio, and all others enter. And this is where the prince kind of makes his final statement. "Where be these enemies, Capulet, Montague? See what a scourge is laid upon your hate." See, a curse. Scourge is a curse. "That heaven finds means to kill your joys with love." The joys are obviously their children. "And I, for winking at your discords too, have lost a brace of kinsmen. All are punished." So he says basically, "And I, for turning away from all your problems, I also lost one of my family members," which was his cousin Mercutio. So all are punished really is a reference to not only the Montagues and the Capulets, but to him as well. And then, of course, just like the play started, it's going to end with the chorus. And the chorus states, "A glooming peace this morning with it brings. The sun for sorrow will not show his head. Go hence to have more talk of these sad things. For some shall be pardoned and some punished. For never was the story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo." That's the end of the play, guys. I'm not sure if you guys were expecting how they ended up dying, but I thought it was a pretty good twist the first time I read it. I also really like the prince's speech at the end because he does reference that all of them are punished. All of them are punished for the parts that they played in the deaths of Romeo and Juliet. So my question to you guys, something to think about as you move forward with your lessons for the week or the month or however far you are in the lesson of Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. Who do you think is to blame for the deaths of Romeo and Juliet? Who do we blame for Romeo and Juliet dying? Something to think about. All right, guys, stay safe. Make smart decisions.